Perfect. Okay. So thanks for joining me today. My name is Amanda Horowitz. I'm one of the academic advisors in the Pre-Med Health Science Center. And so my goal today is to go over the ins and outs basically of the 2023-2024 dental school application. So by the end of this, I want to make sure that you guys have an understanding of what the actual application cycle timeline looks like, not so much the preparation for it, but once the application opens, how that works within what dental schools are doing. Give you a broad overview of the application itself, some tips as you're beginning to enter information in it, given that it's open now, and then share some application strategies and resources. So let's start by talking about the application timeline, right? The dental school application is essentially what we call a centralized application system. And more commonly known as ADSAS. It's operated by ADEA, which is the American Dental Education Association. There are 72 participating dental schools. 68 of those 72 are in the United States and 5 are in Canada. So if you are a student who's looking at applying to both Canadian and American schools, you can still do that through the one application that you're filling out within ADSAS. The application opened on May 9th. So when it opens, it means that you can get in there as an applicant. You can start entering information. You can start inputting experiences and their descriptions, your courses, which we'll talk about all this information in a second, even evaluators' names. Submissions won't start until May 30th. So that means that you can spend between May 9th and May 30th inside the application doing all of the inputting that you want, but you won't actually be able to submit any application until May 30th. Once the application is submitted on May 30th, the first place it goes is to the application headquarters. So it does not go directly to a school. Once your application is received by the application headquarters, they are going to engage in a process called verification. So what verification is a line-by-line comparison of the coursework entry that you've done to your official transcript. And so what they're doing is they're making sure that A, you've entered it correctly, but B, that the course subject that you've chosen from a drop-down menu on the application is also accurate. And if it's not accurate, they're going to make some changes there. Once your application is verified, your ADSAS GPA is calculated, or the many ADSAS GPAs are calculated. And then from that point, they're sent on to dental schools. Dental schools review and interview season always starts in August. So that means that invites for interviews may come before August, but interviews typically start in August. And interview season can run through February, January, kind of depending on the school. Acceptances for schools, all schools have to wait until December to offer any acceptance for the first time. And then the application itself closes in February 2nd. A lot of dental school program deadlines are going to be before that February 2nd date, but you don't want to wait until the program deadline to apply because many schools use rolling admissions, which means that they are reviewing applications in the order that they are received and taking action on those applications in the order that they're received. Action might mean extending an interview invite. It might mean putting the application aside to wait until later. The school might be interested in the application, but they're not ready to extend an interview invite, or it might mean a straight up rejection. Am I talking too fast? Are you guys okay?
I think your pace is perfectly fine.
Okay, thanks. I'm so sorry. I had to blow my nose. Give me 1 second.
Okay.
Okay, so regardless of published deadlines, you want to plan to get your application submitted in June. Many dental schools will begin reviewing applications in late June, early July, so that they can start to select the candidates that they'd like to extend an interview invite in August. And those schools, a lot of them will not review or take action on an application until it's complete, which is where DAT considerations come in, right? So our office always talks to students about knowing what the DAT score that they plan on submitting their application with is prior to actually submitting the application. And that's for 2 reasons, really. One, if you have taken the DAT and you plan on retaking it and you submit, but indicate that you are retaking it, then a lot of schools may not view your application as complete because that second score isn't part of your application yet. Two, if you don't know what your most recent DAT score is, you can't make a very accurate school list, because making a school list should take into consideration your predicted verified GPA, your DAT score, as well as the other kind of more qualitative factors, right? So knowing what your DAT score is and having that final DAT score so that your application is complete is very important. Some schools will take an emailed copy of the instant unofficial score report that you do get walking out of the testing center, but that's on a school by school basis, and you would have to reach out to the school and ask them that. A lot of times they'll allow you to either upload that instant unofficial score into the program material section of the application or have you email it directly to their admissions. But going back to kind of the point of this slide is waiting until a school's deadline is not the best thing to do. Working hard throughout this editing period, so right now May 9th to May 30th, and getting that application submitted within the first part of June is really your best shot in terms of timing, pending your application is well-rounded, well-written, competitive, so on and so forth. So what kind of information is collected in this centralized application system? The application, when you open it, is divided into 4 different quadrants, and each quadrant collects a different kind of information. 3 out of those 4 quadrants will collect information that's shared with every one of the schools that you apply to. That 4th quadrant, the program specific quadrant, will collect information pertinent to just the schools that you apply to. So each school may require something different in that section, and I'll explain that more in a few minutes. But in the personal information section, you can plan on including information about your demographics, like race, ethnicity, citizenship, information about your parent and or guardian, environmental factors that impacted kind of where you grew up and what your upbringing was like. Other information collected in the personal information section is going to include your DENT PIN, so that all of the pieces of this puzzle can be associated with the same person, right? Your language proficiency, military status, if you have any prior service, and academic infractions, if you have any, previous attendance or applications at professional schools. So this would include other dental schools or other application cycles, or other professional schools. Sometimes students will start medical school and decide dental school is for them instead, and stop medical school and then apply to dental school. Sometimes the students are studying for a very, very specific field, and they requires them to go to both medical and dental schools. So you would indicate that there. This is the section you will talk about your manual dexterity in. It's in a text block and you get a certain number of characters. Same thing with your status as a first generation student. So it's more than just it's more than just the demographics that you would expect to enter there. The academic history information section is where you'll enter all of your high schools and colleges attended. So this means if you are a student who did dual enrollment in high school or started at a different college and transferred to Wayne State, you're going to have to enter all of those schools and also get transcripts from all of those schools. It's also a place that you'll enter your standardized test scores and then your coursework. Coursework I'll talk about in just a second. The supporting information section is where you'll enter your evaluators' names and contact information. It's also a place where you can enter any achievements that you've accomplished or earned. It's where you'll enter your experiences and then also input your personal statement. And then, like I said, the program materials specific section it's program specific section. It's labeled program materials. I'll talk to you about that more a little bit later on in this presentation. So getting started, some of the things that you are going to want to have readily available to you so that you can engage in some of these tasks within the application itself are knowing how to request your transcript, having a copy of the transcript for yourself, having a list of your activities, and then also knowing what the letter writer requirements are for the schools that you are planning on applying to, so that you can assure that the people you are asking to write your letters check all those boxes. So I'm going to go into each of these in a little bit more detail. So in terms of transcripts, you will want to fill out your schools attended section early on so that you can then request a transcript to go to generate a transcript request so that each of the schools that you've attended can send an official transcript to the headquarters. You won't be able to, I'm so sorry, I need to mute this. You won't be able to do the program materials section of the application without doing the transcript or coursework entry section. Excuse me. When you're requesting your transcripts, you'll actually want to request 2 from every school that you have attended. One will go directly to the application headquarters. The second copy you should request to yourself because you want to make sure that you are doing a line by line entry. So, or a line by line entry that matches exactly what your official transcript says. So whatever your official transcript says, sometimes Wayne State, for example, will use very weird abbreviations in the way that they describe course titles or write out course titles on their official transcript. That should match exactly what you type in on your application. This makes sure that there are absolutely no questions about what something is when you your application is going through that verification process. The timeline to process and verify is really going to vary on, and that's dependent on when you hit submit on your application. The further and further we get away from that first day of submission, so May 30th, the longer it's likely going to take that your application is verified. The longer it takes for your application to be verified, the longer it takes for it to get to the dental schools that you want to apply to. So getting these transcripts early so that you have them and you can start your coursework entry is very important. It's okay if you have in progress classes on them, right? So as long as your winter grades have posted, if you are taking summer classes, it's absolutely okay for those summer classes to be in progress. You do not have to wait for those summer grades to be posted in order to request a transcript. So I have to pause again. I'm sorry, you guys. We do have a video up on our YouTube channel that shows you how to request transcripts through the Wayne State system. Wayne State recently just switched to, here it is right here, using the National Clearinghouse. So I'm going to copy and paste that and drop it in the link for you, or in the chat for you, the link in the chat for you. Every college and university, though, is different. And so if you do have coursework at another school, you're going to have to find out what their process is in order to request that transcript. The transcript's going to be really helpful in coursework entry, like I said. And again, you have to complete that colleges attended first in order to do that transcript request and then also start entering your coursework. You want you to do like a line-to-line match, like I mentioned. So you take your official transcript, you use exactly the abbreviations, you do the coursework entry. You are going to make sure that you enter all classes, not just the prereqs. So a lot of students are like, well, I only had to take 2 semesters of bio and microbiome and 2 semesters of Gen Chem. Everything should be entered from the very first college class that you've taken. So this does include dual enrollment coursework or early college coursework. Okay. Make sure you are entering every attempt at every course. So if you took bio 1500 once and repeated it because you didn't like the grade that you got in it, or you needed to repeat it, you would enter it the second time in the semester that you took it the second time. And then at the end of your coursework entry, you have the option, you have the ability to mark which classes were earned or which credits were earned via AP or IB credit, or maybe CLEP exam. Same thing with repeated classes, which classes were repeated. You can mark classes in progress. So if you are a student who is, again, taking summer classes right now, or planning on taking fall and winter classes next year to complete your degree, you can go ahead and enter those, especially if you have a prerequisite left, and mark it as planned or in progress, depending on which is accurate for where you're at right now. So that dental schools know what the remainder of your coursework looks like, and they know when to expect a grade in a remaining prereq that you might be missing. There are 2 academic update periods during which you can go in as the applicant after your grades are posted for the summer and the fall semesters and update your grades in those classes. Dental schools will also have the ability to see those updated grades once the academic update period is over. So if you have a class that's in progress or planned, you will have the ability to enter that grade afterwards. One of the things I mentioned previously is the applicant's responsibility to classify each class that they've taken from the course subjects list available within the application itself. This is what the course subjects list looks like. It's going to work in a drop-down menu in the application, but it's going to ask you basically, you know, your Psych 1010 class. How would you categorize that? Well, it's a psychology class, which falls under behavioral sciences. So you would classify that course subject as behavioral science. You know, another one, what about physiology? Where does that fit? Well, physiology is part of the biology content. So you would classify that as bio. That's again, how the application is going to calculate the various GPAs that they do calculate. So it's to your advantage, and I'm dropping this link into the chat for you. It's to your advantage to take a look at what the course subject areas are. Sometimes, especially with classes like Honors 1000 or LFA, life fitness activities, or sometimes honors seminars are honors 4250, right? But really it was more of like a philosophy class. Students aren't sure what to do. So looking at what your options are and asking questions early is a good idea. If you make a lot, or if there are a lot of things that have to be changed during the verification process by the application headquarters, it can slow down your application verification process. So you want to do everything that you can to make sure that that is as smooth as possible. And if any questions so far?
Thank you.
All right, moving on then. Activity write-ups and experiences is something else that students will work on early on in the application process. ADSAS does not have a limit on the number of experiences that you can include in your application. They want you to enter as many as you feel like you want to or need to showcase what your experience has been as you've prepared for dental school. So encouraging you to enter ones that demonstrate your preparedness, competencies that you feel like a dentist should really have, and account for your time in undergrad. You do have a limit on the number of characters that you can use to describe each of those experiences though, and it's 600. That includes spaces and punctuation. So use one space instead of two in between sentences if you aren't already. 600 characters isn't a lot. So coming up with a strategy about the best way to use those characters is something that we'll talk about on the next slide. You are going to, again, in this section, have to categorize each of your experiences from a drop-down list that the application will provide for you. Here are those category types. With descriptions, and I'll drop this link in the chat. You can categorize some of your experiences as academic enrichment. So this might be something sponsored by, you know, the University of Detroit Mercy, where you go in on 8 Saturdays and learn to do, you know, dental related tasks. This would be like summer health education programs, so on and so forth. Dental experiences is either paid or unpaid work within the dental field, where maybe you observed or you interacted with patients. I talk to my students about leaning more towards this right here when they're labeling dental experiences, because there is a shadowing category itself. So shadowing in person, shadowing virtually. One of the questions that usually comes up is virtual shadowing okay for my minimum number of hours? Dental schools, especially now that we're kind of getting back to, you know, in-person offerings for a lot of things, are wanting to see those minimum number of hours done in person, and virtual shadowing as a supplemental resource. You can record employment outside of the dental field, so anything else. Extracurricular activities, so if you're part of any student orgs, you do any kind of I don't know, organizational work outside of school. Research is here, and then volunteer work done outside of a clinical setting. So those are the categories that you would have to label each of the experiences that you've had. You do have the ability to highlight 6 as the most important. You are really guided towards picking the 6 that were really pivotal in your development as a pre-dental student and as an individual. New this year, you can add experiences while your application status is in progress. It's a bit unclear, according to all of the resources that I've looked at, what that means. According to the Help Center, an in progress application is one that has not been submitted yet, or one where the fee hasn't been paid. So to me, that doesn't even make sense. Like, you should just enter all of your experiences that you want to include in your application up front. You can't enter any future experiences because you are not able to like enter future projected hours. So if you do have something that's starting right while you're applying or right after you're applying, we advise you to save that for interviews or update letters should you decide to send those. So to that strategy that I talked about, really kind of, you want to think about what and so what when you're crafting those experience descriptions, right? Those experiences, again, are used to document your undergrad journey. You don't want to just list, because again, 600 characters is not a lot of characters. So as you're considering what you're going to include in those 600 characters, ask yourself, what's the purpose of the organization? What was my role in particular in this organization or in this experience? Were there any significant responsibilities or accomplishments, right? Most of us know what a dental assistant does. So if you use the first 450 characters to list every single task that's your responsibility as a dental assistant, you don't have very many more characters to talk about why it was such a pivotal experience for you, right? So, you could use the phrase of, in addition to assisting to major procedures, this was a major responsibility and here's why it was so important, right? Other things to consider: what did you develop while you were engaging in this experience? What kind of impact is it going to have on you as a future dentist or as a dental student, right? Because a lot of this too is demonstrating your ability to be able to persevere in dental school. So what kind of skills or coping strategies did you learn that's going to aid you while you're in dental school? And what do you want dental schools to know about you or your values or your value to them as a result of the experience that you engaged in, right? So these questions are really important in helping to guide what kind of content you might include. You shouldn't be answering every single one of these in every single experience right up, because it's just not possible. Other tips: all of your experiences, especially when categorizing, are user defined. You get to decide how to label it. So everything counts, right? I would advise you to get your list together before you begin so sorry.
Bless you.
Thank you. Sorry. I would advise you to get your list together before you begin so that you can look at what the categories are and strategize how you're going to categorize each experience that you enter. You may encounter some experiences that can be categorized in more than one way. And in those circumstances, you want to demonstrate well-roundedness, right? How you categorize those experiences that could be categorized in more than one way is going to dictate how you write about it. Put long names in organization box and then use abbreviations in the description if possible, right? So let's say you were really active in the Children's Oral Advocacy Health Project. I don't know if that's how that acronym goes, but either way, you would write that out. And then behind it, in parentheses, in the title box, put COHAP. And then in your experience, only use COHAP. So you're using 5 characters instead of however many it takes to say the title of the organization, right? And then avoid descriptive fancy language. This is not the place to tap into your creative writing skills. You need to be very straight to the point, concise, and direct when you're writing in your experiences. Okay, so now letters of evaluation. You can submit as an applicant up to 4, okay? There's no hard and fast rule that 2 must come from science professors and 1 must come from the dentist and another 1 must come from a mentor. It is your responsibility as the applicant to look at the schools that you plan on applying to and find out what their letter writer requirements are. The Dental School Explorer is one great resource to do this. The other way that you can do it is look up individual school websites, right? Once you've identified that maybe it makes the most sense for you to get 2 professors, 1 science, 1 not, a dentist, and then you decide to have your supervisor at work write 1, right? Once you decide on the 4 that you're going to write, take a good look at who they are and what your relationship is with those people, right? You want quality over a letter writer title, right? Getting a dentist that you've met once to write over a supervisor who can comment on so many attributes about you doesn't make sense. These letters should not only support what you say about yourself, but give more information than what you're saying about yourself. It's someone else's perspective about why you're going to be good at this, right? Support your letter writers when you're asking them, right? Asking someone to write a letter of recommendation is a big ask. If the person's going to write a quality letter, it's going to take them time to do it and edit it, and then they're going to have to upload it. So make sure that you're asking face to face. That comes across as more respectful, more courteous, more gracious for them doing it. Develop and communicate a timeline. So before you even go to them, know what the timeline of the application is. Know when you plan on, or you hope to plan on submitting. Know the how for the letter writer. Be able to articulate to them what to expect when it's time for them to upload that letter. And then be professionally persistent when necessary. Some of our letter writers may be faculty at the university who are on 10-month appointment or don't work in the months. Keep that in mind when you're asking them. Some of them may only check their email once a week because of that, right? You need to be professionally persistent, but you should not be calling and emailing them every day, right? Your letter is not their number one priority. So asking early enough and being supportive of all the things that they need to accomplish it is the best thing that you can do. Okay, that last section in the application, the 4 quadrants that I talked about, the program specific information section, it's called program materials. What happens here is this is the section of the application where you add the various schools that you want to apply to. With each school that you add, you may be required to do a few tasks, and the schools that you add have the individual capability to develop what these tasks are. So one of the more common tasks is for you to mark which classes you've taken to meet that school's prereq, right? So it makes sense to show you this. Hold on. Can you still see my screen?
Yeah, I can see it.
Do you see the ad test application opening?
Yes.
Okay. So for example, okay, so Goldman's in this is I'm in the program material section. Goldman wants you to ask questions or wants you to answer questions. Consider your interests, experiences, characteristics, and skills. What makes the school a good fit for your general education? How will you contribute to the school community? Are you a previous applicant? How did you learn about this school? And then the supplemental fee. Here, they're also going to say, which class did you take to satisfy the bio with lab requirements? Which class did you take to satisfy the biochemistry requirements? Which class, so on and so forth. So what each school asks of you can vary. Here's Case Western. There's a document section where you have the option to upload official or unofficial documents. Your responsibility to look at each one of those and start to work on crafting those additional question answers. Everything will be done within the ADSAS portal, so you don't have to go elsewhere usually to pay unless it's to pay your supplemental fee. As you're doing that, you can submit schools one by one. So it doesn't look like I can submit anything right now because A, I haven't filled out this entire application, and B, it's not May 30th yet. Once it turns May 30th though, let's say you had everything in for both AT Stills and Goldman, right? You could submit those 3 applications and then continue to work on California, North State, Case Western, and Columbia, right? So you can submit one at a time if you want to. Ideally though, you're going to spend between now and May 30th prepping everything so that you can submit all at once. Okay, so a couple of FAQs. What can I change after I submit? The list is kind of long, but very specific. So again, I told you there are academic update periods. There's an academic update period for summer grades, and there's an academic update period for fall grades. So during those academic update periods only, you can go in and update the grades in the classes that you have marked as in progress or planned. You can update contact and profile information. You can go in after you've submitted to some schools and add additional schools. If you haven't submitted 4 evaluations, like maybe you submitted 3 with the first set of schools that you applied to, you can go in and add a 4th. If you had 4 people in there and someone didn't upload, you could go in and delete that person and then add another 4th. You can't delete old entries, but you can add to certain sections where applicable. This might be like a school saying, can you go in and upload that unofficial DAT score in our program material section, right? Can I enter my unofficial DAT score in my application? You can, it's school by school specific, so you have to check. And then how late is too late? There's not a black and white answer to that question. Hitting submit in July may be too late for a lot of schools. There are some schools that invite applicants that believe that those applicants are going to be a good fit with the intention of filling their class within their first couple of interview dates. So the earlier your application is, the earlier your application is in, the more consideration you have for interview dates. Submitting in July or August limit your chances of getting an interview in the same year. Like those are the candidates who are interviewing in like January and February of the following year. So, which makes students nervous, right? All right, so resources, the Applicant Help Center is one great resource. 2 of the links that I've dropped in the chat have come directly from the AdSense Applicant Help Center. Our office does have drop-in sessions throughout the month of May. We're hosting one on Thursday. There's actually one today right after this. I don't know if I'm gonna go. I might go home because I don't feel good. But I'm gonna drop a link in the chat with all of the dates and times that we're offering them. Those drop-in sessions are for you to literally come in with your laptop and work, and we're there to answer questions or read a piece of writing. And then we also have a workshop coming up about creating a school list. So what are the things that you should be considering as you're working through a list and deciding where would you be a good applicant at? I'm going to stop screen sharing and stop.